Title: The Day They Misjudged Olivia Johnson. The sun filtered through the morning haze, casting golden rays across New York's prestigious Madison Motor Gallery, a dealership known for its luxury fleet of Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Bentleys. The building, all glass and polish, stood like a monument to extravagance, attracting the city's elite and socialites. A girl stepped inside, her school uniform wrinkled slightly from the morning commute. Olivia Johnson, 17, carried herself with quiet composure. Her natural curls framed a curious, intelligent face. She wore worn sneakers and carried a modest canvas backpack, making her presence almost invisible among the marble floors and designer suits. She wasn't here for photos. Her gaze fell on a fiery red Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster, a car with lines so sharp it could cut through arrogance. Olivia's eyes shone with admiration, not for the car's extravagance, but for what it meant: a surprise gift for her father's 50th birthday. Behind the main counter, Simon Keller, the senior sales executive, noticed her. Tall, immaculately dressed, and known for his sharp tongue, he narrowed his eyes and stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, pointing toward the exit with subtle mockery. "This showroom is for serious buyers. Maybe try one of the more accessible dealerships downtown." Laughter murmured from two nearby employees. Olivia's cheeks flushed, but she didn't falter. She nodded silently and walked out with dignity intact. The next morning, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the dealership. Its sleek body shimmered under the morning sun. Simon noticed it from his office window and rushed to the entrance, adjusting his tie. He didn't know the storm he was about to face. From the back seat stepped a man in a tailored gray suit, tall, calm, and powerful. He carried an air of leadership that made heads turn. That man was Jonathan Johnson, founder of a global renewable energy firm and one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the country. Simon's breath caught when he recognized him. "Good morning," Jonathan said in a measured tone. "I'm here regarding something that occurred yesterday. My daughter, Olivia, visited this dealership. I believe she was turned away." Simon stiffened. Richard Miles, the dealership owner, joined him at the door. "Mr. Johnson, we're honored. Please, let's sit down." "We had no idea." Jonathan raised a hand. "Exactly. You didn't know? And because you didn't recognize her or her potential, you assumed. You humiliated her." The room fell silent. Employees and customers stopped mid-step. Simon stammered, "Sir, I apologize. If we'd known." "But that's the issue," Jonathan cut in. "Had she been someone else, someone less well-connected, would you have treated her with the same contempt?" At that moment, Daniel Rivera, a junior sales associate, stepped forward. "Mr. Johnson, I remember Olivia. She was respectful and calm. I wanted to assist her, but—" Simon turned sharply. "Daniel." "It's true," Daniel said. "She asked to learn more about the Aventador. She even mentioned it was a birthday gift. But Mr. Keller dismissed her outright." Jonathan nodded. "Thank you, Daniel. It takes courage to speak the truth." He turned back to Richard and Simon. "I was planning a major acquisition for my company fleet, over 30 vehicles. You were the top contender, but not anymore. Instead, I'll be working with dealerships that value people beyond their attire or appearance." Simon paled. "Please, Mr. Johnson, give us a chance to make it right." "You'll have a chance," Jonathan said, "but not in sales." He handed both Simon and Richard letters. "You'll report to the Johnson Foundation for a month of community service. You'll meet those you'd normally dismiss. And perhaps, by the end, you'll understand the cost of your prejudice." Simon grumbled as he arrived at the Johnson Foundation Center the following week. Kids of all backgrounds filled the halls, some laughing, others quietly reading. A young boy approached him. "Hi, I'm Jaden," the boy said. "Want to help with my science project?" Simon rolled his eyes, but something about the boy's excitement kept him from saying no. As the days passed, Simon softened. He helped distribute meals, taught basic budgeting, and played basketball with children like Jaden, bright, kind, curious. One day, Jaden showed him a drawing of a Lamborghini with the words, "Dream Big." Simon felt a pang of guilt. One afternoon, Olivia arrived at the center to deliver books. Simon froze, guilt overtaking him. "Miss Johnson," he said, lowering his voice, "I'm sorry. Truly, I was wrong." Olivia studied him. "Do you see us differently now?" "I do," Simon replied. "Not because someone powerful told me to, but because these kids showed me what I refused to see. Olivia smiled gently. Then maybe there's hope. 2 months later, the Johnson Foundation hosted a gala to celebrate new partnerships. Olivia, radiant in a light blue gown, stood beside her father as guests arrived. Simon and Richard came too, more reserved than usual. Jonathan stepped on stage. Tonight isn't about business. It's about change. About seeing people not through filters of prejudice, but through the lens of respect. He paused, then smiled at Simon in the crowd. And it's about growth. We all make mistakes. But what we do after, that's what defines us. The audience erupted in applause. Simon felt tears sting his eyes. Richard patted his shoulder. Let's make sure we never go back, Simon whispered. And Olivia, standing across the room, nodded silently, believing that sometimes the best revolutions start with one small act of dignity held firm in the face of insult. Epilogue. The legacy of a lesson. 6 months had passed since that unforgettable day at the Madison Motor Gallery. The dealership, once marked by rigid perceptions and quiet prejudice, had evolved dramatically. The showroom still gleamed with luxury, but there was a subtle change, one that could only be felt, not seen. It was in the way every guest was greeted with sincerity. It echoed in the respectful conversations among staff, in the brochures printed in multiple languages, and in the new diversity training programs held every quarter. Simon Keller now led these sessions. His once polished arrogance had given way to a kind of quiet humility. He didn't talk much about the past, but when he did, it wasn't to defend himself. It was to teach others how not to make the same mistakes. He often told the story of the girl in the school uniform who came for a Lamborghini, and how her dignity taught him more than any sales award ever had. He was now a mentor to younger employees, especially those from marginalized backgrounds. Simon made it his mission to advocate for fair hiring, transparent promotion processes, and outreach initiatives with local high schools and community centers. It wasn't penance. It was purpose. Meanwhile, Olivia Johnson had blossomed in her final year of high school. The incident, once a source of pain, had transformed into a pivotal moment that lit a fire within her. She was now a youth speaker, invited to panels and schools to talk about the importance of self-worth, resilience, and standing firm in moments of humiliation. Her speech at the United Youth Assembly, held in Washington, D.C., had gone viral. Standing confidently on the stage, wearing the same old-school uniform she had worn that fateful day, Olivia addressed thousands. You don't need to look like money to be worth something. Dignity isn't worn, it's lived. I was judged by the way I walked into a dealership. But today, I walk into rooms that change policies. I walk into hearts that once refused to listen. And I walk beside my father, who taught me what it means to rise without hate. Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience, including a few members of Congress who later referenced her speech in proposed legislation aimed at combating racial and socioeconomic discrimination in the retail sector. Daniel Rivera, the junior salesman who had stood by her, was now the youngest assistant manager in the dealership's history. He and Olivia remained in contact. He even joined her on stage once to tell his side of the story, the courage it took to speak against his boss, and how that one act changed his life trajectory. Jonathan Johnson, Olivia's father, continued to quietly fund and expand the Johnson Foundation. What had started as a local support center for underprivileged children had now grown into a national initiative. With branches in over a dozen cities, it provided mentorship, legal aid, scholarships, and financial literacy workshops. Simon and Richard Mason, once reluctant participants, became two of its biggest advocates. Each year, they offered paid internships to students from the foundation, and the dealership proudly hosted an annual fundraiser gala. But the true legacy of that day went far beyond titles, positions, or sales. One winter morning, Olivia visited the original Madison Motor Gallery. It was quiet, the sky a soft gray. Inside, a new exhibit had been installed, a glass panel etched with the words, "Everyone deserves respect. Every one." Beneath it was a photograph, Olivia, in her uniform, standing beside the red Lamborghini, smiling, not because she had purchased it, but because she had reclaimed her dignity. Simon appeared beside her, holding a cup of cocoa. "You know," he said, quietly, "that photo changed me more than I thought it would." Olivia turned to him, her smile warm. "Then it was worth it." They stood in silence, gazing at the tribute, not to a sale, but to a story. A story of change, of grace in the face of contempt, of what happens when a teenage girl, armed with nothing but inner strength, chooses not to walk away quietly, but returns with truth, justice, and the kind of power that can't be bought. Outside, snow began to fall gently on the sidewalk where, once upon a time, a girl had walked out humiliated. Now, her footsteps had become the path others would follow. And somewhere in a quiet corner of the city, a child held a crayon, sketching a red Lamborghini with the words, "Dream big. Always." And,